I've spent my entire career within the tech world. I always say that I was kind of like gradually moving away from the world of big corporate enterprise companies towards the world of bright and shiny startups. When I think about AI and automation, definitely AI defines the future of work, not only in our space, but I believe that there is certain fatigue associated with this buzzword. If you embrace AI, this can become your friend. But if you feel threatened and rejecting all the opportunities to dig a little bit deeper and to learn about that, I think that this is exactly the moment when your skills can come true.
We are live on the Objective Hiring Show. Today we're joined by Anastasia. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate you inviting me here. And you're excited to discuss all the intriguing questions that we have today.
Yeah, I'm pumped to have you. And whereabouts in the world are you joining us from today?
I am based in sunny Amsterdam, so a little bit behind in terms of the time zone.
Yeah, sunny Amsterdam. Not always sunny. It's fair to say. You get your fair share of rain there, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. But we take this in our stride and we try to make the most of the sunny days. So enjoying the weather right now.
Excellent. And tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Anastasia?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. So in professional life, I've spent my entire career within the tech world. I always say that I was kind of like gradually moving away from the world of big corporate enterprise companies towards the world of bright and shiny startups. So I've spent this past 8 years, I would say, building all remote global talent acquisition teams. I spent almost 4 years at GitLab. That was the largest all remote company before the pandemic hit. And for the past, once again, almost 4 years, so about to hit my anniversary soon, I'm leading the talent acquisition team at Remote. So all things hiring related fall under my area of responsibility. Since I joined the company, we've grown the company's headcount tenfold. So when I started, we were around 200 people big, and now we are about to hit our 2,000 people mark, which is exciting.
Happy days. And how have you done it? How has the team managed to do that? How have you scaled successfully from 200 to 2,000 people, do you think?
That's a great question. And I would say that at different period of times, we were approaching this differently. I would say that when I joined Remote, that was the time of very steep growth curve, I would say, because in the first 12 months since the day I joined, we have brought on board more than 750 team members. And that was exactly the time when we were flying the plane, when we were trying to build these at the same time. So I would say that for a team leader, it's always a big challenge when you need to deliver to the business and hire for the business, but at the same time, you need to hire for your own team. So my main goal when I joined Remote was really to build foundations and set up some basic processes and also tools in place. But with me going through the growth and scaling stories at previous companies like GitLab, Uber, you name it, I would say that I was always trying to keep this scalability on the back of my mind. So not only trying to find the workaround that will work in the moment of time when you need to solve and fix something, but really trying to pressure test the solution and think about whether this is something that could be your longer term strategy. So yeah, that was fun. And I would say that if I have to think about kind of like different stages that the team has gone through, so for the first, I would say, year and a half, we were definitely very much focused on setting these foundations and just streamlining the process. Last year, our main focus was, first of all, on going deeper when it comes to the quality of the hiring process and the decision making. For example, we introduced our bar raiser program, We put a lot of guidelines, training, and enablement resources for the hiring teams in place. And then the second priority for us was investing into our tech stack. I would say that we managed to bring a lot of interesting solutions and new vendors on board, which definitely helped the team and kind of like prepared us for future growth. And when it comes to this year, we are not hiring that intensively. Last year, we once again doubled the company in size. So we hired more than 900 team members. This year, we are leaning more into sustainable growth, I would say. And that's a perfect time for the team to embrace AI, to spend some time on educating themselves and once again, looking back at all the processes that we have in place and bridging the gaps that we didn't have time to bridge before.
Yeah, it's been such as you've just painted that picture and thinking back, even myself over the past 5 years, so much has changed. Oh my God. Because we had this pre-COVID world, then COVID, then oh my God, the world's going to end. Then, oh no, we want to hire everyone in the entire world. And then, oh no, we're not going to hire anyone at all. And then AI, and then all these challenges have just come out of nowhere aggressively. And so I guess part of your role has also been quite adaptable, having that kind of growth mindset and just dealing with problems as they come up and just kind of rolling with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Tim, you're spot on. I would say that I believe it takes a lot of resilience to be and to stay within the talent acquisition function, no matter at which level you are, whether you're a recruiter, whether you're managing the teams. Our industry has seen a lot over the past 5 years, and there were good times, there were bad times, and I really hope that like the future has something really positive for all the TA professionals in store. I know that the economy is still sending us some mixed signals, but I'm excited to see how the rest of the year will play out.
And thinking about it now, I guess talent acquisition is quite pro-cyclical. As you're hiring more people, you need more people to do the hiring. As you're hiring less people, you need less people to do the hiring. Um, because of the nature of economies, then they kind of go up and down. Uh, do you have that in mind when you're setting up the structure of your team in terms of who you hire and how you hire them to have some kind of flexibility in mind? Or
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that we've also gone through different phases and approaches. And myself as a leader, I would say that I had a few experiences when I was involved in some unlucky events for the talent acquisition teams. And this is definitely not something that any leader would look forward to. So last year, when we had to build up the capacity of the talent acquisition team and accelerate hiring, the approach that I decided to take was to bring on board fixed term team members. So instead of hiring full-time employees, permanent team members, we were bringing the majority of folks on 6-month, fixed-term contracts, and it really helped us to give these flexibility and ability to pivot depending on the company demand. And this year, we scaled back the team. So putting these numbers at our hiring peak last year, the team was 35 people big. Now we are around 20 people. And I would say that thinking about all the possible scenarios that you have as a team leader when you need to scale up the team and then scale it back, I would say that for me, that was probably the best decision ever, with a caveat that we also had some time to actually hire for our team, because I know that it's an interesting period in the talent acquisition industry, because sometimes you really need to consider bringing external support. And I almost see a comeback of RPOs, agencies, embedded recruiters. It feels like a new era for them, which is very interesting. But I think that it truly reflects what's happening in the economy. And as team leader, you really want to make sure that you, first of all, protect your own team as much as you can. You give them this security and safety related to employment. And I think that fixed term team members, either internal or external, support can really help you navigate through these changes. And to your second point about versatility and flexibility, I think that this is exactly the trend that we are seeing right now across the entire recruiting world, because definitely all the recruiters, sourcers, coordinators, like they are asked to take more, I would say, functions and day-to-day responsibilities. I believe that we are steadily moving away from having highly specialized roles towards what we call talent advisors or talent partners. And when I'm building my team, this is something that I constantly have in mind. Like, the world is changing, remote is changing rapidly, and we really need to make sure that people within my team feel comfortable, let's say one day working on tech hiring, the next day pivoting to sales hiring, and delivering the same level of service and quality to the hiring teams. So yeah, that's definitely something that has been on top of my mind.
That's an interesting trend because, as you say, so let's say moving away from specialization to a more, well, to put it in tech terms, almost like a full stack recruiter, I guess, where you do a little bit of everything. Uh, is what is enabling that? Because it must be difficult to be as good at sourcing and screening and hiring an accountant as you are a software engineer. It must be quite challenging. Is it AI is automating some annoying bits and now you don't need to do as much stuff? Like what's the unlock as you see it?
Yeah, I would say both. Like when I think about AI and automation, definitely AI defines the future of work, not only in our space, but to some extent, I believe that there is certain fatigue associated with this buzzword. Like everyone is talking about AI. Not everyone truly knows how to use this in their day to day. We just keep saying these cliched phrases that like let's have AI solve all these things. So when I think about AI and automation, for me, it's almost this 80-20 rule, like 80% of your blockers and inefficiencies you can resolve with simple automation. And the rest 20% of efficiency gains, in my opinion, should be breached by AI. So definitely technology has helped a lot on this journey of, first of all, giving people more time back and like to learn, to train, to connect with peers, to connect with the stakeholders. On our side, something that we managed to kind of like change in the team structure and in the team setup is that with the help of several tools and introducing new technology into our process, we rebranded our recruiting excellence team. So basically a recruiting coordination team. And now it's called talent operations. And the focus has switched completely from day-to-day coordination and scheduling interviews just back to back towards overseeing our tech stack, project management, program management. And it also allowed us to push some of the automated scheduling tasks to recruiters because those are not that time consuming as they used to be. But now recruiters actually have the full ownership of what you said, almost like an end-to-end full stack recruiting process. And it really helps us to provide a better candidate experience because now you have one person on the team, your recruiter, your go-to person, your guide within the company, rather than tons of folks reaching out to you at different stages, trying to coordinate time, then passing you to someone else. So, yeah, I would say that definitely technology is helping to remove all the, I'd say, daunting and monotonous tasks and give some time back for learning and really pushing meaningful changes in your day-to-day roles.
Of the work that a typical TA professional does, in your view, whoa, what would they consider to be the kind of annoying, tedious stuff that they'd love to get automated? and what would typically be the bits that they would love to keep themselves and all would like to do more of? Is it just they all love the people stuff and they want to deal with more people and they want to do less data entry and that kind of stuff? Like what's the typical split that you see?
That's a great question. I think that like a lot of things might depend on individual choices, but when I think about like what you want to keep to yourself versus what should be automated, is basically like the approach that you have to your work. So if you're acting as a robot, right, and if you're just doing kind of like the same things from A to B, B to C, and you like it's a very straightforward scheme, in my opinion, this is exactly the time when you should be threatened by AI and automation. But if the impact that you're providing and the quality of work is defined by human interactions and something that is not streamlined to the extent that like it once again could be just kind of like the air scheme of decision making tree, I think that this is something that the majority of people who work in HR and people functions enjoy. So this is where I would really draw the line. And once again, right, if you embrace AI, this can become your friend. But if you feel threatened and if you're rejecting all the opportunities to dig a little bit deeper and to learn about that, I think that this is exactly the moment when like your skills can come true.
Yeah, and I feel like probably the good news for people working in talent acquisition is, at least in my experience, there's a lot of gray areas. And even though large chunks of it could be automated, there's so much grayness, even thinking of, you've got three candidates to choose. Which one are you going to choose? You need to have a discussion about them. You need to weigh up some pros and cons. You need to pitch and present an offer to a candidate. You have to keep them abreast. You have to make sure they're happy, interpret little words they say. Does this mean they mean something else? Keep the hiring manager on site, unpack their requirements with them. So it's clear like this. I think we're a very long way away from it being completely automated.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that the most difficult part of the recruiter's job is that you always depend on people, right? On one side, as you said, you have a candidate and you really need to build rapport and connection with them and in a way present their interests. But on the other side, you're dependent on the hiring manager and they have their own list of requirements and the ideal profile, and you're constantly balancing these interests and also managing expectations on both sides. And I would say that like when you're dependent on technology only, like it makes your life more predictable, I would say, while in our jobs you can never know what the next day brings because people tend to change their mind. We are not always acting very rationally. So, yeah, like that's why it's a funny story. But when I started in my first recruiter role, the first thing that I was told by my manager is that I should never trust people. I can't say that I'm leading my team with this notion, but that's true. You're like, you always depend on people and you never know, you're like, which side will fail you next.
Yeah, I find that you almost develop a sixth sense for when someone's not really being completely honest with you, or you just they're replying a little bit later than what they normally would. Like I'm pretty sure something's up here, and I've managed to take that over into my regular life as well, and I kind of notice things more than I would have before I worked in this field.
That's true. There are some skills that we are developing that affect our day-to-day lives. I realized that personally on my side. Now I prefer not to ask people questions. You're like that's kind of like that's my professional deformation. I'm asking so many questions at work so that in my personal life I prefer to take some rest and just listen and observe.
Yes, yes, there are a lot of questions, that's for sure. I'd love to get your insights on AI at the screening stage and what you've seen so far there. I think last time we chatted, you mentioned you might have experimented with some tooling or tried some new methods. And I'd love to hear how that's gone.
Yeah. So to give some context, I would say that when it comes to the biggest challenges that my team has right now, and I would call this a blessing in disguise, is that we tend to attract a lot of interest. So on average, we are receiving around 30,000 applications on a monthly basis. This is more than a lot for the team of our size and for the number of openings that we have posted. I believe that it has something to do with our name in the first place, because whenever you look for remote opportunities, you land on remote.com and then you go to the careers page. So we are very lucky to have very strong inbound flow of applications. At the same time, I would say that it's almost unrealistic to expect that we will be able to look at every CV, give it some thorough thought, and then decide whether we move candidate forward or not. So for now, we don't have a solution implemented right now, but as you rightly mentioned, we are looking at the market and we are experimenting with different types of AI powered solutions. So something that we would like to introduce within the team is AI CV stack ranking, because you know that AI in HR is always associated with some risks, compliance, GDPR, and etc. And I think that's something that we realized and something that we discussed with the legal team, compliance teams, is that we never want to outsource our hiring decision to AI algorithms. And this is where we draw a very strict line. But we do believe that technology can help us with surfacing the best candidates and matching profiles to the role requirements that we have. And when I think about the potential of these AI stack ranking and like some vendors that I've seen already, I believe that it really goes beyond just application reviews. There is a big topic of talent rediscovery when you can really look at all your silver medalists or even just people who applied some time ago and they're just sitting in your ATS database and no one has time to actually go and like rediscover and find them. I think that it also has a lot of potential for internal mobility, kind of like analyzing the current skills of your team members and matching them to the opportunities that we have. And once again, surfacing these opportunities to the internal teams. So yeah, there are quite a few players on the market that kind of like that are at least thinking in this direction. Um, Speaking about the tools that we implemented or the ones that we are going to pilot, we are thinking about introducing AI interviews for some of the volume roles. So it is yet to come. Can't share a lot about these at the moment, but I'm really excited about this kind of like first step towards bringing AI to the top of the funnel stage. Last year, we've implemented Bright Hire, which is an AI note-taking tool, but I would say that now we are really pushing a lot on adoption of all the functionalities. So it's not only about just having a transcript and a nice scorecard that is kind of like pre-populated by you, by the tool for you, but now Bright Hire allows to train and coach your interviewers. So, like based on the basically instructions and prompts that you give to the tool, your interviewers will receive in personalized coaching notes on their strengths when it comes to the interviewing skills, together with the opportunities that they have to make their interviewing skills better. And something that we are currently discussing with Bright Hire is the opportunity for us to get aggregated data and really slice these by different teams. Let's say, like we know that in sales, people struggle with competency-based interviewing model. So this is kind of like a dream state of things, but I think that like we can definitely make it happen because another big topic for us is, as I shared, keeping the hiring bar high. And I'm constantly thinking about how we can continue enabling the interviewers because you know that people, especially those who have been managing teams for a while, they always think that they're great interviewers, that they don't need any training, any support from the recruiting teams, which in a lot of cases is not that true, I would say. So that's why we're also rethinking the way we are conducting our interview training. I would really like to pivot towards some micro learnings and just small training nuggets and bits that we can give to the hiring teams instead of just having one like never ending interview training that no one is really excited to go through.
That's awesome. And yeah, this is an area I'm really excited about. And we've spoken about on the show with different people over the past few months. It's great to hear someone implementing that, and good that Bright Hire is building that out. One specific thing I'm interested in is uh, what I've noticed myself in using ChatGPT or other AI tools is I feel like I'm quite receptive to its feedback for me in a way that I maybe wouldn't be if a human was telling me that. Something about the fact that it's coming from an AI. How could I be annoyed at an AI telling me that I should change these things? And I'm wondering whether if you've seen that trend so far in the interview feedback the interviewers are getting, if it kind of removes some of that personal aspect to it.
That's a great question. Yeah, absolutely. So, in full transparency, we are just launching these personalized interview feedback. But now, when you mention these, I do think that there is certain bias towards AI always knowing like the true state of things. And I think that like this also kind of like brings us back to just the discussion we had about responsible use of AI. And I think that this is the biggest debate that we are now seeing in the recruiting industry because AI is an enabler, it's a helper and supporter in your day-to-day operational recruiting tasks, but you can't really outsource everything to AI and just trust all the outputs that AI gives you back. But it's a very interesting kind of like voice that you called out. So I'll keep an eye on that. I'll keep you posted how the implementation goes and what kind of feedback we will be getting from the hiring teams.
Yeah, I expect positive things, but yeah, fingers crossed. Hopefully, it works out. Um, One thought I've had a lot over the past 6 months around AI in hiring in particular is I feel like maybe we're holding it to impossibly high standards, standards that are much higher than what we'd hold humans to. And so I'll give you a specific example. Let's say at the screening stage, let's say we're talking about can we put in place some automated CV screening tool instead of having humans do it? And that's a choice. There's been some really interesting studies over the years that look at uh, how biased humans are at reviewing CVs based on the names that are in the CVs. And so I've seen various versions of this study. One that was done in Australia a few years ago tested three groups. One group of CVs had a Chinese first and last name. Another group had a Chinese first name, Anglo last name. Third group had an Anglo first and last name. They applied to thousands of different jobs and then measured which of those CVs got a callback or not. And the only difference was the names. So if there's any big difference, they basically could say, well, there's some kind of bias against an end. To cut a long story short, the group that had a Chinese first and last name only got a 4% callback rate, and the group that had a white first and last name got a 12% callback. So you would have three times the chance of getting a callback if you applied to a job in Australia with the name Joe Smith versus Xuan Yizhao, for example. And that's human screening because this is from 3, 4 years ago, uh, which is terrible. And so I feel like we're right to be worried and concerned about AI, but if the current version is so broken, aren't we almost worth giving this new tool a shot? Because at least in theory, a well-designed AI tool, I think, could be done in a way that removes all of that information and does it in a fairer way. What do you reckon?
Yeah, no, first of all, terrible to hear, but I would consider this to be, like, unfortunately, true in kind of like a lot of cases. So when I think about, like, all these discussions about responsible use of AI, I think that kind of like the biggest argument in favor of this discussion is that AI algorithms are trained by humans, and it's almost a black box, right? Especially for recruiters who are not necessarily the most like tech savvy people. Like, no offense, like, to us, it's almost like some sort of magic, right? And it's really hard to tell. And these are a lot of discussions that I had with different vendors, because sometimes, like, you would get an AI score. Let's say like this candidate is at 80% match of the role, but it's really hard to understand how those scores are calculated. And unfortunately, sometimes it's really hard for the companies who design these algorithms to explain why this number looks like that, and be like, what is the difference between like 2, 3 percentages that you see with different profiles. So definitely kind of like the unknown is triggering all these doubts and concerns. I would say that maybe I'm a very optimistic person by nature, but I truly believe that, as you said, while we should be very cognizant about the kind of like the potential drawbacks and the risks that AI technologies have, it has like it gives an opportunity to reduce the number of false negatives and hopefully spread opportunities to the candidates who truly deserve them and who have the right skills, competencies to be extremely successful in the role. But maybe, to your point, their name is not, like, the traditional one that a recruiter would go to, and maybe they didn't go to the high school that certain recruiter or hiring manager is targeting. So I'm very passionate about the positive influence and change that AI is bringing, in the sense that there might be some matches that are not obvious to us as individuals and human beings, but it's worth a try. So I think that, like, the kind of like the future is already here, and I feel good about what's to come.
Yes, absolutely. And I can even think back to like when we started with Aluba, part of my motivation for starting the company was when I worked as a hiring manager, I would get a lot of resumes. I would read a lot of resumes. I'd shortlist them based on what I thought looked like the right resumes. But um, my biggest pain point was I would interview a lot of candidates, many of whom I thought weren't really like how they represented themselves in the resume. They said they were advanced this skill, advanced that skill. You get into that first interview, you're 5 minutes in, you think, oh my God, why are we here? This is wasting our time. And so I wanted to reduce the false positives and say, do this test first, prove you have the skills, then we can talk. But interestingly, since starting the company, like probably our first biggest wins were the opposite point, the false negatives, the ones who never got an interview, they never stood out, they were never going to get a chance. And then you give them some way to kind of prove themselves and through some objective measure, and suddenly, bang, they come to the fore. So that was really exciting because that's a huge unlock. And I know we had a few early customers in particular who were scaling quite aggressively and found, oh, this is amazing. We don't need to read CVs. We just give everyone a test. So suddenly we don't have to choose only, 2 out of 100 to interview. Everyone gets the same chance. Oh, wow, there's all these people we were missing. And so I imagine with, these more kind of advanced AI tools that are coming in now, there'll be a similar dynamic that will happen.
Yeah, and that's exactly the idea that we are going to pilot with AI interviews. We are not rolling this out across the entire company. So, like, sending an AI interview link to 30,000 candidates might be a little bit too much for the beginning, but we're going to pilot this exactly kind of like with the same idea behind that, that we basically want to give everyone a fair chance to stand out. And I would say that this aligns greatly with our mission as a company, because something that we always say at Remote, that talent is everywhere while opportunity is not. And I think that our team has been very focused on hiring people outside of traditional talent hubs, and we've seen a lot of success, and we managed to bring a lot of great people and amazing talent on board. And I would never even like call this hidden gems, right? Because like those people were kind of like were not hiding from us. It's just an intentional effort of thinking a little bit outside of the box and really like going to the locations and targeting like profiles that wouldn't be considered kind of like traditional ones, but it's been helping us tremendously as a company. And once again, that's part of our mission. So it's almost like a part of our DNA.
Does Remote hire people anywhere, or do you focus on fitting people from certain like time zones into certain teams? How does it actually work?
Yeah, so I would say for the majority of roles, we typically never know where we will end up hiring a person. So thinking about the distribution of our team members, currently we have employees in more than 75 countries, I would say. So we are a very dispersed global team. Together with that, definitely there is a certain number of rules that are location specific. Typically, we would be talking about time zones or specific language requirements. For example, we might need to hire a German speaker for the sales team. Interestingly, we have quite a few of them in Spain, I believe. So it doesn't mean that we would only go and target Germany for German speakers. So once again, this is the beauty of being able to hire people anywhere, because sometimes you might get some nice efficiency gains and cost efficiency gains as a company. But here, I would say that the majority of roles are all remote, and this is something that you'll see on our website. And then for customer experience roles, sales roles, we might have some time zone or language requirements.
The other big benefit that I think is, well, the thing you mentioned before, which is the volume. You can just attract so many candidates if you are willing to hire effectively from anywhere. And so I was always struck at the kind of peak of 2021, where every company was like, "Oh my god, I can't find a candidate." In Australia, we had lockdowns for 2 years. There was no migration at all, and we rely very heavily on migrants, skilled migrants for tech roles. And so every company was fighting over a tiny number of engineers. The salaries for software engineers in Sydney went up like 50% in 6 months. It was insane. And even at that point, I was really surprised they were still reluctant to even consider hiring someone, even in, I don't know, Indonesia, or like pretty much the same time zone. Uh, it's to me quite narrow minded because, as you say, there's amazing talent anywhere, everywhere. I think, as far as I know, intelligence is evenly distributed across the world, but access definitely isn't. And so I think, yeah, it's not surprising you've had such a big unlock by hiring people everywhere.
Sure. And I would say that, like, this is how remote was founded, right? And this is what we actually help companies of all sizes to do. When I talk to, our customers or potential customers, or just peers in the industry, I think that when you start talking about, like, let's go and hire globally, it's a big undertaking, and it's hard to change your hiring strategy from hiring only, let's say, within Australia to hiring globally. So something that I feel very strongly about is that it's actually fine to start small, right? It doesn't mean that if you want to expand your talent pool, if you really want to discover new talent markets, it doesn't mean that suddenly you need to go all in and hire anywhere in the world. It's fine to look at some neighboring countries, like countries that are in the same time zone. So whatever the small steps that sound reasonable to you, that won't be too disruptive to your people strategy, because definitely you need to find ways how not only hire these people, but how to onboard them, how to nurture this sense of belonging, and really make sure that they become an organic part of your team. So that's a big project, but it's fine to start with small steps and then eventually build up more global presence. And I think that this is something that like is quite often overlooked, unfortunately, because like we tend to think in this black and white concepts. You either work on site or you work remotely. You either hire locally or you're hiring everywhere. So yeah, it's fine to sometimes like stay kind of like in the gray area for a while.
What do you see actually as the future of remote work? Because I feel like we got to this point in COVID where it's like, oh, this is the new normal. This is now just going to be most jobs. Maybe you can work from home. Places like Australia, people started moving out of the big cities and moving hours up the coast or inland to somewhere that was kind of a bit more space, a bit more relaxed, thinking they could always just remote. Then there's quite an aggressive reversal. Certainly last year, return to office, these kinds of mandates. Um, I haven't actually seen the numbers, but I feel like we're probably there's way more remote work than there was in 2019, but still way less than there was in 2021, something like that. What you must have better visibility over this than me. What is the state of it and where do you think it's going to go?
Yeah. So definitely we are seeing a lot of heated debates, and my personal perception is that sometimes we are just hearing the loudest voices when it comes to return back to office policies. We've seen quite a few big tech companies calling their employees back to the offices. And I think that it impacts the perception of that everyone now needs to go back to the office. In my opinion, we are just kind of like seeing this trend of normalizing and stabilizing, because definitely the pandemic has changed the way we work. A lot of companies had to go and start working remotely because there was no other way to do that. But the trend of kind of like some of the companies going back to their office spaces doesn't mean that remote work is over. It's just the normal kind of like stabilization and normalization that you would see kind of like basically whatever the economic graph you would look at, right? Like there is a high uptick and then kind of like it goes almost like to a plateau state. So when it comes to kind of like our observations, first of all, we don't only work with all remote companies. I think that this is where our name might be a little confusing because like do you become a partner with remote, you don't need to get rid of your office spaces. But we've recently launched our remote talent job board, and month over month, we see more and more active registrations, active candidates. So the demand is there. And I believe that it's not even about remote work, it's about flexibility that people want to have in their lives, and basically the choice that you can make as an individual, whether you want to have an opportunity to go to an office, let's say a few days a week, maybe you want to be at your office space 5 days a week, or you prefer to work remotely. That's why I think kind of like all models are viable. They truly depend on who you are as a company. I think the reason why, once again, there are so many discussions and really heated debates in the industry is that there is lack of transparency and lack of research, I would say, or like real data that we can show to prove that actually companies that work remotely are more productive or vice versa, because we just haven't had enough time to gather this data and really talk about remote work in terms of numbers and business figures. That's why remote work discussion quite often is a very personal and opinionated discussion. And when it comes to calling people back to office, I think that quite often, like companies are trying to replace some of the changes that are happening within the companies, or some of the genuine reasons of why they're calling back people back to office with productivity explanations, because we know that there are so many examples of, like you have an office space that you're paying your rent for, you need to prove these numbers in your budgeting. So that's why you need to use the space. Or maybe your board members are completely against remote work because they've been in the industry for 50 years. They just can't believe that someone can work remotely. Or maybe like that's a silent layoff. So there are so many underlying reasons, but this is not something that companies or leadership teams really talk about. And that's why I think, like people are sometimes overreacting to these discussions because there is just simply lack of transparency and some real data that you can refer to.
Yeah, and productivity's probably a difficult one to measure, especially in any consistent way at a company level. As you say, yeah, there must be some hidden agendas behind the scenes advocating for or against this, I suppose. Um, because you've been working remotely for so long across different companies, you must have a really good idea of, if someone was setting up a company tomorrow and they're like, oh, I'm thinking of making a remote first company. What should they do? What should they not do?
That's a great question. So, first of all, I think that if you're in a position to start your company as all remote, you're already very lucky because it's way easier to start building the foundations from scratch rather than to change the way you work halfway through. I think that one of the kind of like fundamental aspects of all remote culture is documentation and really nurturing the culture of documentation. And in my mind, it's very connected to async communication. So basically, if you're building your company as an all remote one, most likely you will have team members in different locations, in different time zones. And something that you really want to avoid as a leader is that your employees store their knowledge in their heads. So to make things happen, you need to wait for someone to wake up, to go online, and etc. So the way we build our processes and our knowledge base is that we always document everything. Whatever the question a team member has, you should always have a link as an answer. And I remember that it took some time to really make these an organic feel and thing and build this muscle within my team. And this is something that for the first 12 months I was doing all the time. Whatever the Slack thread I was in, someone would ask a question and I was like, where is the link? If we don't have a link, please go and document it. And this is something that you constantly need to remind the team members to do until it really becomes part of their organic reactions. And I think that it takes time, but it really helps to give people autonomy to function on their own, to find the answers, and then build their day around their schedules and have this autonomy to become a manager of your own calendar. So yeah, this would be kind of like two main pieces of advice: async culture and culture of documentation.
One thing I remember back when we first started was, uh, you know, just creating a friendly vibe was a difficulty, especially when we were focusing on mainly using Slack and then maybe the occasional video call, Google Meet. And so a big challenge for us was just making sure that we know we're speaking to human beings on the other end. They're not just a bit of data. Like this is just, we're just trying to imagine they're sitting next to us in an office like anyone else. We ended up using a really cool product that I didn't really see take off since COVID, a product called Gather. It's like a virtual office space where you have little avatars and a little desk and you can go up and start speaking to someone. That product for us was a complete game changer because it just made you feel like you were in an office next to them, even if you weren't. And so I can give a shout out to the guys over at Gather for a great product that really helped us over the past 5 years a lot.
Oh, that's really interesting. I remember that well, kind of like at the beginning. So when I joined the company, right, almost 4 years ago, we were sending Oculus headset to all the employees. Like that was a bold decision. We are not doing this right now, but we definitely had some aspirations about like bringing everyone kind of like in the virtual universe together. But when it comes to kind of like building these social connections, I think it all comes down to being intentional about that. So, for example, when it comes to our onboarding process, it's a 5-day standard onboarding for all the employees that join remote. And one of the days is dedicated to socializing. And basically, as a newbie, you're asked to go and schedule coffee chats outside of your team with the people like that you might never be working with closely. But it really helps to kind of like get yourself comfortable with having these coffee chats, talking to strangers who are actually not strangers, but your colleagues. We always assign buddies from the department outside of your own team. And it really helps like people to kind of like to embrace the culture of working remotely, but also connecting with your colleagues. And I would say that for me, I remember like back in the days when I joined GitLab, that was my first all remote company. At some point, I realized that after working there for several months, I knew more about my team members than like than I had known about my colleagues when we were sitting all together in the office space, exactly because we had some dedicated time just to talk about random stuff. And, like, for example, within my team right now, we have monthly social calls. I'm actually missing one right now, but I'll have another one in the Americas time zone. So no worries. I'll catch up with a bunch of team members. We have our weekly stand up within the team. And I would say that the biggest question that we have there is just one random person was sharing. And people love that because like you almost get a sneak peek into what's happening in your uh, peer or like coworker life without like spending too much time on that. It also uh, aligns with our async communication culture, but it's nice. And I would say that people are very open to that, and it really helps to build these connections within the team.
Yep. Can definitely plus one the random chats. We've had a session every Friday for years of the business that we call Shit Chat, which is just an hour of talking stuff, playing a little game, getting to know each other. Done that for years, and it's great way to.
Yeah. And you need to do that because like when you work remotely, all the meetings that you have are about business. I would say that you don't have a lot of time for water cooler talks. So that's why you need to find a certain time on your calendar to talk about things that are not work related.
Absolutely. Well, awesome. Some great advice from a true expert in remote work, it's fair to say, after all these years. So thank you for sharing those thoughts and the rest of your insights today with us, Anastasia.
Thank you, Tim. Was happy to be here. So thanks for having me. And yeah, thank you.